Good morning, scholars. Today we're going to continue our journey through Pharr's Homeric Greek, a book for beginners. Continuing with Lesson 16, Part 2, which will treat the formation of the present and future in the middle passive aspect and in the middle passive voice and the first and second aorist passive tenses. Okay, so to reiterate, the middle voice shows that an action is performed with special reference to the subject. Lumai, I wash myself. The middle represents the subject as doing something in which he is interested. He may do something to himself, for himself, or he may act with something belonging to himself. Okay. So the middle has its specific endings associated with the primary tenses, and we see those on the left: my, si, tai, metha, ste, ntai, with the duals being eston, eston. So my, si, tai, metha, este, ntai. And so on the right, we see those endings united with the thematic vowel, omai, esai, etai, ometa, este, ontai, and then the dual eston, eston in the primary tenses. And we will see soon in the second person singular, you have a phonetic effect that occurs with the disappearance of sigma. So, the loss of sigma in the second person singular. This is treated at Smythe 628 in detail. So we have lu si becomes lu a, either with eta, ana, iota subscript, or with epsilon iota. And this is accounted for by the phonetic rule found at Smythe 120 that sigma between vowels is dropped, and then the two vowels in play will then contract. So, as 628 says, a, consisting of eta, iota subscript, and a, consisting of epsilon and iota, are found in the present, future, middle and passive, and in the future perfect passive. So si yields a, which is usually given as a proper spelling in the text of the tragic poets, whereas epsilon iota is printed in the text of prose and comedy. So it's just a matter of the genre. And you can continue to read this note on your own. The last bit says that epsilon iota is sometimes called adic and ionic, in contrast to eta with the iota subscript of the other dialects, including Koine. So in the New Testament, you would see the eta with the iota subscript. Okay. So what we end up with is the present indicative of the middle passive looking like this. The presents with the thematic vowel, that means omega verbs, these are formed with the present stem is made by adding the thematic vowel omicron epsilon to the verb stem, and then adding the endings to that. So we end up with lu omai, lu a in its two forms, lu etai, lu ometa, lu este, lu ontai. Again, lu omai, lu a, lu etai, lu ometa, lu este, and lu ontai. And of course, the duals are lu eston, omicron nu ending. Now, the futures are formed in like manner, just as we saw with the active forms. The future stem is formed by adding the tense suffix sigma with the thematic vowel omicron epsilon to the verb stem. So here again, we're going to add these endings of the middle primary tense to the future verb stem. So we end up with lusomai, lusei, lusetai, lusometa, luseste, and lusontai. Again, lusomai, lusei, lusetai, lusometa, luseste, and lusontai. So now the passive voice, because this is the three voices of Greek, the active, the middle, and the passive. The passive voice, of course, we have in English. The passive voice represents the subject as acted upon. So from Xenophon, we have this nice demonstration. They pushed and were pushed. They struck and were struck. Okay. Othun, othunto, epion, epionto. Now, this little note of 1735A is very important. The passive has been developed from the middle, and with the exception of some futures and the aorist, the middle forms do duty as passives. So the middle and passives share the same forms. So you end up with hieretai, which as middle means he takes for himself, i.e. chooses, but as passive, hieretai means he is chosen. And this development can be compared with the same thing you might see in French and German, as this passage goes on to say. And so too, kekutai, as middle, has poured itself, but as passive, kekutai has been poured. And he has this final note that in Homer, there are more perfect middles used passively than any other middle tenses. So Homer likes to use the perfects of the middle passively more than any other tenses. So now we move on to the forms of the aorist passive. We'll have a first aorist passive and a second aorist passive. Two different forms of the aorist passive. So for the first aorist passive, the stem of the first aorist passive is formed by adding theta, eta, te, or theta, epsilon, te, directly to the verb stem. So we have, I was loosed, ethutein, I was shown, epantein, and I was given, edotein. And those are from luo, pino, and didomai, respectively. So we end up looking at the inflection of luo in the first aorist passive with elutein, elutes, elute, elutemen, elutete, elutesan. Okay, so again, elutein, elutes, elute, elutemen, elutete, elutesan. And we have the note to 583A in the dialect section, where Smythe informs us that for desan of the third plural, we find in Homer 10, that is theta epsilon nu, as in the kriten. They were separated. Okay, on to the second aorist passive. The stem of the second aorist passive is formed by adding eta or epsilon. Notice the absence of the theta. We simply have eta or epsilon directly to the verb stem. So thus we get eblabain added to blob, eblob, the augmented verb stem. So eblabain, I was injured from blopto. So we end up with the full inflection, eblabain, eblabes, eblabe, eblabemen, eblabete, eblabesan, or eblaben. So again, eblaben, eblabes, eblabe, eblabemen, eblabete, eblabesan, or eblaben. And here again, a note in the dialect section. For asan, we generally find n in Homer and also in Doric. Okay, so if we go into Monro, he goes deeper into the meaning of the first and second aorist, beginning with the second aorist passive, the meaning of the aorist passives. The aorist in eta, that is the second aorist passive, appears to have originally had an intransitive sense, of which the passive was a growth or adaptation. This transition is seen, for example, in ekarain, rejoiced, edain, learned, ru'e, flowed, epane, appeared. In these instances, the passive grows out of the intransitive meaning, parentheses, just as the middle forms, as in the middle forms, it grows out of the reflexive meaning. Okay, and then he gives other examples where such a like transition can be seen. As to the meaning of the first aorist passive, that in theta, eta, the aorist in thane is often indistinguishable in meaning from the aorist middle. There appears to be ground for distinguishing it from the aorist in ain, that is the second aorist, as originally reflexive rather than intransitive. In many cases, middle forms are used in Homer interchangeably with these in theta, eta. And thus, Monro gives quite a few examples that you can examine at your leisure. This is section 44 of Monro's Homeric Grammar. So, the fact that we have the tense suffix of the first aorist consists of theta, eta. That generates certain euphonic operations that occur because, as we see here in 587 of Smythe, before theta of the suffix, pi and beta become pa, ka and ga become ka, and ta da ta become sa, sigma, and pa and ka remain unaltered. So we have these examples here: lepo, leptane, blopto, bloptane, pulato, pulactane, ago, octane, comizdo, comistane, peto, pestane, grappo, graptane, tarato, taractane. And these changes, you can see what's up if you look at the fact described in section 82 of Smythe, that a labial or palatal stop before a dental stop must be of the same order. So here we're dealing with the dental stop theta, which is the first letter of the suffix of the second aorist. And so any of either palatal or labial stop before that theta has to become either pa or ka, because the rough order, it will convert to a rough from middle or smooth to a rough order in order to agree with the roughness of the theta. So here in 82C, pi theta and beta theta become pa theta, kappa theta and gamma theta become ka theta, and thus you get the forms that are described. And regarding a dental stop before another dental stop, that stop will become sigma. So when you see the way these second aorist stems manifest in the principal parts, you will see this euphonic rule very much at work. Okay? So let's look once again at the Smythe's display of tense suffixes at 455, because this chart is the best for just getting an overview of the entire verb system and what actually makes the verb stems stand out. So again, these tense suffixes, the tense suffixes which are added to the verb stem to form the tense stems consist of the thematic vowel and certain other letters. Okay, he says that no tense suffixes are added to the verb stem in the second aorist active and middle, and in the second perfect and pluperfect and of me verbs, which we'll see down the road. Likewise, in the perfect and pluperfect and middle of verbs in omicron and me, and we'll see that later. But for now, what we've seen is that in the second aorist active and middle, there is no thematic vowel at work. But if we look at this, we see, well, we can ignore largely most of the present system because that's just very complex. But we see that first one, the omicron epsilon of the thematic vowel, which appears before the ending in verbs like luo. And then for the future system, number 2, we see that sigma before those same thematic vowels, omicron epsilon, as in lu, so, lu, ses, lu, se, lus, amen. And then 3, we see the first aorist system characterized by sigma alpha, so elu sa, elu sas, elu se. And then the second aorist system, which simply has the thematic vowel after the shorter stem, so elepon, elepes, elepe, elepomen. And then we haven't seen the perfect first or second perfect yet, or the perfect middle system, but going down to what we've just been talking about, the first passive system in theta, eta, and theta epsilon, and then the future passive, which we'll look at in a second, in theta, eta, sigma, plus the thematic vowel before the endings. And then the second passive in simply eta and epsilon, with the future passive with eta, sigma, with the thematic vowel. So again, this tense suffix chart I think is very helpful in just getting a synopsis of what you're working with as the various tense suffixes create the tense stem of the verb. So, going back, we're looking at our first and second aorist passive. Again, the first aorist passive, the stem of the first aorist passive is formed by adding theta eta or theta epsilon directly to the verb stem. So we have elutein, I was loosed, epantein, I was shown, edotein, I was given. And so you see elutein, I was released, and then the infinitive is going to be formed by nai, nu, alpha, iota, lutenai. Remember, the infinitive does not show the augment. So I wish to be released, to have been released, lutenai. And then the second aorist passive, the stem of the second aorist passive is formed by adding eta or epsilon directly to the verb stem. So we have blabein, I was injured, from blopto. And so blabein, I was harmed or injured. In the infinitive, blabenai, blabenai. So regarding these infinitives, the infinitives in nai, nu, alpha, iota, always accent the second from the last syllable, the P note. So we see that accent in the present and perfect of certain me verbs, but here we see, and it's also active in the 2 aorist passives, and that's what we're looking at right here. So we have lutenai and blabenai as our infinitives of the first and second aorist passive, respectively. So moving finally to the first and second future passives, the first future passive is formed as described in 589. The stem of the first future passive is formed by adding sigma plus omicron epsilon, the thematic vowel, to the stem of the first aorist passive. So it ends in te somai, te somai. So pai de u te somai, I shall be educated, and lu te somai, I shall be loosed. So lu te somai, I will be or shall be released. And then if you look at the infinitive, you take that stem and add estai to it. So you end up with lu te sestai, lu te sestai for your infinitive. And then regarding the second future passive, the stem of the second future passive is formed by adding sigma and the thematic vowel omicron epsilon to the stem of the second aorist passive. It ends thus in a somai. So you have blebe somai, I shall be injured, from blopto, eblaben. So blebe somai, I will be harmed, and the infinitive is blebe sestai, blebe sestai. Okay, so it'd be very important to be aware of the principal parts and the way the vowels change amid the principal parts. So for instance, here with blopto, we go from blaben, eblaben, with the alpha in the second aorist passive, to blebe somai with the eta in the second future passive. So you see the importance of being aware of your principal parts. Okay, so because we've seen it in what we've covered of the Iliad so far, I wanted to show you the endings of the aorist passive participles, even though our full discussion of participles is still down the road. We see that the participle of the aorist passive adds new tau, and thus in the masculine you get lutes from lutent, and lutesa for the feminine, and then luten in the neuter. So your endings are as displayed here: kolotes, kolotentos, kolotenti, kolotenta. And you will see that these endings are like the endings of the third declension in the masculine and the neuter. The neuter you get koloten, kolotentos, kolotente, koloten. But in the feminine, you are back in the first declension, a, es, a, on. And likewise in the feminine plural, I, on, is, as, all added to that a psi, a son, a size, a sas, being the full form. But then in the masculine of the plural, you're dealing with the same endings that you had with pas, except you have the epsilon and the epsilon iota as opposed to the alpha. So kolathentes, kolathenton, kolatese, kolathentes, and then the neuter kolotenta, kolotenton, kolotesi, kolotenta. So the participles are always problematic, and it's very important to just work on them. So this is our first, as it appeared in Hogar Basile e Kolotes, he, for he, having been angered at the king, having been angered at the king Agamemnon. Of course, let's refer to Apollo. Okay, so here we have a nice picture of Heracles fighting the Nemean lion. That's what mastering the Greek verb system is ultimately going to feel like. But good luck with it and keep working hard. Don't give up. There's nothing, very little better than reading the Iliad in the original. Have a good day.